warm and friendly hello. Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Heaps Peterson, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. We've got an excellent podcast for you. We've got a nice two-part conversation coming up today with one of our good friends, Rob Donaldson, who does such amazing work with the show/podcast, Rob's Best Bets. We had him on a little bit less than a week ago, and we were chatting it up about the Wofford situation. We were thinking, all right, we've got a lot here with St. Joe's and Wofford. Well, ever since then, we saw Auburn have their coaching change with Stephen Pearl now being the new coach, and we have seen what has all happened with CSU Bakersfield. Just a not great situation. So we're going to be talking about those two ordeals, and we're going to be diving in quite a bit on the hierarchy of the SEC. Where do we see Auburn? Where were our expectations before Bruce Pearl decided to step down? Where are our expectations for them now? And where are some of the teams in the middle of the SEC that might be worth taking a look at? So we're going to be fleshing that out and so much more. Rob is just such a wealth of knowledge, and it's going to be a great chat with him today. Keep in mind that on this podcast, we saw 4 conference previews remaining. The Big East, the Big 10, the Big 12, and the SEC. So we've got the big boys remaining, and we certainly have a lot to get you guys all caught up upon here in the next month or so before we get games back in our lives. We're about 5 weeks away from the start of the college basketball season, so we're getting closer and closer, and I'm going to do my best every single day to try to get you guys as informed and as prepared as humanly possible. So if you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. And if you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of 2 ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, there's the name does not matter, so as per usual, please send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. And everything on the podcast today is powered by EdgeBoost. EdgeBoost is making sure that bettors are able to have access to their funds whenever and wherever. That 100% of gambling transactions do indeed get approved. With EdgeBoost, you earn cashback rewards as you utilize it as well. When you go to edgeboost.bet, put in that promo code of Greg, G-R-E-G. That gets you $1 for $1 match on your first deposit up to $25. Now let's chat it up with Rob, who does such a great job over on his YouTube feed, youtube.com/Rob Donaldson. This time of year, doing great work on college football, baseball, and so much more. And he, much like myself, looking at college basketball all 12 months out of the year. You're able to follow him on the old Twitter/X at RobDFB altogether. And Rob, always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me on, Greg. And my goodness, man, we did a show earlier in the week, and all of a sudden, all the news cycle decided to break the day of the release of that episode. So, man, I'm excited to be talking college basketball with you again here.
Oh, absolutely. I had to get you back on for that, because ever since we talked, Auburn had a changing of the guard with their coach. CSU Bakersfield had things explode. KK Robinson is out for the season once again with Little Rock. And I do think that there's about 37 Towel Boys under investigation as well. So, that's the way that things are going in college basketball. And just how do you take a look at, we're going to lump them all together before we separate them a little bit more, these teams with coaching changes, because I don't think that you can have a one-size-fits-all sort of situation, because it feels like all 4 of these are their own living, breathing entity, whereas like with St. Joe's, I don't think that it's doomsday for them, whereas with Wofford, I think it's terrible, and we still don't know exactly everything with Cal State Bakersfield, but I don't think I'm going out on a limb saying that it doesn't look good for them right now.
Yeah, and this is becoming kind of this weird norm in college basketball over the past just 2-3 seasons at this point, where coaches are retiring after the coaching carousel cycle because I think almost to an extent, they want to have a chance to pick their successor. And how do you feel about that? Obviously, I don't think it favors the university and sort of the administration, let alone the kind of, potentially the fan base by getting the best guy available. If a coach is going out on their own terms in a good place, maybe you can find some solace in doing something like that. But yeah, man, no, it's been a crazy news cycle, especially with the Auburn drop on, I think it was Monday right there. And it just kind of leads to more and more storylines to fuel the college basketball season.
Oh, absolutely. And how about if we talk about the one with the most moving parts first, because we don't necessarily know what we're going to be getting in terms of Bakersfield, because as of right now, they have not necessarily named an interim coach. Maybe by the time this podcast releases, because this will probably be posted up 24 to 48 hours after we do this chat, they will have picked one. But what do you make out of a team of Bakersfield where I actually felt good about them going into the Big West. I thought, hey, you've got Rod Barnes. You know that they're going to be playing tough defense. They've got a relatively good roster. And now it's all went to poop.
Yeah, and you know what's kind of interesting about like Cal State Bakersfield is obviously one, they've got that hypno weird court going on, and to your point, they've always been a team that just stylistically could really get after you, but I do think that when you are a middling of the pack sort of team in one of those lower or kind of mid-major leagues, heck, maybe take an outside the box look, especially when a team like a Cal Poly did very similarly with a D2 head coaching hire just last season, and all of a sudden, hey, Cal Poly is now relevant again. And I think when you are kind of forced your hand to almost take these outside of the box look, whether it's a scandal or a coaching firing or, whatever it may be, I do think sometimes it can almost be kind of that clean slate, refresh starting point, which ends up kind of elevating a team, just maybe not in this upcoming season in terms of that elevation factor.
Yeah, certainly in this sort of circumstance with Rod Barnes, that's not necessarily amazing. And I mean, with Cal State Bakersfield, I think the big intrigue is going to be looking at totals as well, because you always knew that under Rod Barnes, they'd be a defense-oriented team. And I always noticed, too, in a day and age where teams love to shoot threes, Cal State Bakersfield would take none of them whatsoever. Again, I don't even know who the associate head coach is going to be or the new head coach, what have you, but I can tell you right now, Bakersfield is probably going to be looking a little bit different, and I do think that there could be some very, very good value to be had on a team like Bakersfield looking at their totals, because a lot of people could just sit there watching them driving the ball inside, playing tough, tenacious defense, and I mean, regardless of who they pick, it's probably going to take a drop off.
Yeah, it almost kind of turns into like an AAU ball type of circuit when we see these coaches either leave mid-season or go on like these health sabbaticals that we've seen over the past, few years with guys like Bill Self or, more notable coaches kind of in the mix rather than like a Big West league. But it almost kind of feels like the actual coordinated approach game by game sort of dissolves for that almost jump shot heavy kind of high variation, game by game style of ball that ends up playing out. And so when you are looking at a team like Cal State Bakersfield, which almost kind of played with that similar style, now it's almost going to be almost heightened where they're almost, I don't know, going out there and maybe giving us a wild card scenario of, heck, I remember watching Fresno State last year and not knowing what to expect game in, game out. Maybe that is something that we see with a team like Cal State Bakersfield in a Big West Conference that I think is actually very, very good.
Yeah, the Big West Conference, I do think is rock solid. And again, like I picked Bakersfield fourth before this news in the Big West. I have to drop them down at the very least to the bottom four, because a big reason why I picked them over a team like a UC San Diego, a UC Riverside, is that those teams had new coaches. There's quite a few new coaches out there on the West Coast, by the way, Mountain West and Big West, and now I have to put them quite a bit back of them. I don't know if you had to do the same thing, but like I had actual expectations for this Bakersfield team, and now they're all going out the window.
Oh, 100%. I mean, when you see the landscape of the Big West last year, obviously UC Riverside is one of the big ones with Magpio overseeing a coaching change. But when you are looking at, say, UC Santa Barbara, UC San Diego, Cal State Northridge, Cal Poly, there are a lot of teams that have kind of lived in that middle tier of the league for a long time that I think are starting to really see an upwards trajectory. And so what does that do to a team like Cal State Bakersfield that, to your point, looked really improved last year, thought potentially they could take a step up this year, and now all of a sudden the biggest of wrenches kind of got thrown in the mix? I 100% am no longer as bullish as I was on Cal State Bakersfield coming into the season, and I think from a betting standpoint, it's a total avoid, but it could turn into one of those ultimate like wild card collapses where I want to look to actually fade that team if they don't come out playing the best of ball.
Oh, absolutely. I think that this is not great, to say the least, for the Roadrunners. Meet for them, and they might need to get an actual Roadrunner to be able to get things back on track. As joining me on the show, we do have one of our good friends, Rob Donaldson of the Rob's Best Bet Show, joining me right here on Coast to Coast Soups. And Rob, this one is a little bit more of a, shall we say, clean transition, as with Auburn, they had Bruce Pearl step down, and with them having the video tribute all ready to go and everything like that, you have to think that there was something behind the scenes. Maybe it wasn't revealed until like a few days beforehand, but I have to think that the players knew something might be going on here. But how do you take a look at an Auburn team that I thought that they were probably going to be middle of the pack in the SEC, and now you should have good chemistry. I don't see anyone entering into the transfer portal or anything, but now you've got a guy in Stephen Pearl who he's going to get his first coaching job, coaching out there in a very, very tough SEC.
And actually, I kind of have a different perspective on it because I think the best move here was to potentially not tell the players, because in the world of the transfer portal cycle, are they really going to give, the kind of heir apparent Stephen Pearl the chance to be retained? I don't think so. I think that they're buying into Bruce Pearl and what he was able to sell them at a high school or via the other stop before him coming over to Auburn. And if all of a sudden he leaves right before the transfer portal cycle, maybe Auburn is just a skeleton crew of what they could be. And so Bruce Pearl, in a way, for his son, is setting him up for success in terms of personnel. We kind of saw this with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers when Bruce Arians, left it and gave the reins to Todd Bowles and said, hey, you get Tom Brady and Gronk. I don't think you can mess this thing up. Well, very similar here with Auburn, where the personnel is still there. And with Bruce Pearl, the big thing with him was always the talent accumulation side of that coaching hierarchy. And I think for a lot of reasons, he gets compared to John Calipari for that sort of reason, because Auburn was never devoid of talent. It was just the expectations and the actual accomplishments where it kind of got murky on whether or not Bruce Pearl just kind of met those accomplishments or overexceeded or just kind of was an ultimate wild card year in and year out. And now, without him in the fold, I don't necessarily think Auburn is kind of disastrously lower in my tier rankings of the SEC, but certainly in the early goings, it's something I want to monitor and maybe kind of stay away from in terms of a betting front.
Yep, and how do you take a look at a situation like we do have with Stephen Pearl? He was on the staff for a very long time, so it's not like it's a total stranger that's going to be taking over. It's a son of the head coach, and he was on the coaching staff, so that helps out a little bit, but I still do have some concern for this upcoming season with Auburn, and I do want to flesh this out with Rob Donaldson and where we see Auburn with regards to hierarchy in the SEC and just in general. A few teams that our good friend Rob is feeling bullish/bearish on, including a team that might be picked towards the lower half of the SEC that Rob feels like might be in for a little bit of a breakout. We're going to be chatting about that with him next, right here on Coast to Coast Seats with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VC Family Podcast.
Are you interested in effortlessly growing your Bitcoin portfolio? I sure am. The Bitcoin credit card by Gemini earns you Bitcoin back on every purchase. Use it like any credit card. Buy lunch, gas, or your weekly groceries, and you'll earn up to 4% back instantly in Bitcoin or one of over 50 other cryptos straight to your account. All that with no annual fee. And right now, you can grab a $200 Bitcoin welcome bonus. It's the easiest way to start building your Bitcoin stack. Go to Gemini.com/card to learn more. Terms apply. See the link in the description for more information regarding rates and fees.
And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Seats with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Great to be rejoined by Rob Donaldson. He does such great work with the show/podcast, Rob's Best Bets, over at youtube.com/Rob Donaldson. Follow him on the old Twitter/X at RobDFB. And we were just getting into what we're all going to be seeing at Auburn this year with Stephen Pearl taking over the program. And obviously, this isn't like some of the other situations where for CSU Bakersfield, that's just all sorts of bad, and that's all sorts of bad both on the court and off the court. Not great there. Obviously, the Wofford situation is a mess, so you don't quite have that, but still, it is a very interesting case, and we both know that there's not a lot of other sports where the coach does make such an impact like it does in college basketball, and with Stephen Pearl getting his first coaching job now, that does have to have me having a few question marks with an Auburn team that I feel like we both knew they weren't going to be quite what they were a season ago.
Yeah, and it's always an interesting thing because listen, yes, he was around for the weekly prep or the game preps going into all the big games. And, he obviously oversaw a lot of the recruiting and talent accumulation as well that goes into building up a program like in Auburn the past few years. But there is that sort of in-game adjustment sort of standpoint where Bruce Pearl, how much input was he actually giving? Was he kind of almost delegating it to his assistant coaches to speak up and kind of make a game plan throughout the game? Or was it Bruce Pearl drawing up some of the stuff in late crunch time situations? Because ultimately, that's what it comes down to. That's why over the past few years, when you had a very, very talented A10 team like a St. Joe's, I thought they never were able to accomplish or over exceed expectations because of that head coach limitation. There's different things that go into building a program. And I think with Bruce Pearl, again, it was that talent accumulation, which was the kind of the big standing point. And so maybe that makes it a little bit of an easier transition rather than going down from like a Tom Izzo or a Coach K to the assistant in that situation. And so I am going to be potentially just kind of even keel on Auburn in terms of how I viewed them coming in, how I think they're going to perform this season. But it is one of those things that I don't want to jump full tilt on until I actually see the performance on the court.
Yep, and I do think that Auburn is going to be one of the most interesting teams because they're a team that I lump right into the middle of the SEC. I'm not sure how you take a look at the SEC hierarchy, but I do feel like LSU and South Carolina are probably going to be my bottom two teams. I think that Florida is going to be in still for a very rock solid year. I think against the spread they might struggle, but I think that Tennessee, going to be right back up there towards the top along with Alabama out there in that SEC as well. But I look at that middle of the SEC and it's just a hodgepodge of different teams. And I feel like something like this could be the separator between like Auburn versus Vanderbilt, where I feel really good about Vanderbilt for this upcoming year. Mark Byington coming back, Ole Miss, Chris Beard, such an amazing coach team where if everything else is equal, I feel like a team like an Ole Miss, a team like a Vanderbilt now leapfrogs in front of an Auburn because of this.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're looking at the hierarchy, just depending on you can go to any website, any analyst, see how they're ranking the SEC, and you're going to come out with 15 different versions out of 15 different articles. And I think that's a perfect depiction of what the SEC actually is, because there are a lot of teams that I think are slated near the quote unquote bottom of this league that could very easily be in the top three halfway through the season. And ultimately, from a betting standpoint, yes, that makes it extremely difficult, especially once you hit conference play and everybody's just cannibalizing themselves, kind of like they did last year almost to the success of the league by getting so many teams in the NCAA tournament. But ultimately, when you are looking at the teams that I think have the most upside, that's kind of where I want to place my poker chips rather than, taking Auburn to have a really great year after losing so much talent, after losing a Bruce Pearl. There aren't a lot of coaching turnovers in this league coming in, and I think for that sort of reason, you kind of do have to push Auburn down the hierarchy until we actually see how they perform on the court.
Yep, absolutely. And another team that I did push down my hierarchy with regards to the SEC as well, and I know you're not too far from them, I look at Missouri as a team that could suffer a little bit because under Dennis Gates, they've always been based around really good guard play. And this just doesn't feel like a Dennis Gates coach team. Like Sebastian Mack and Anthony Robertson are probably going to be headlining things in the backcourt, and they've got much more size than they've ever had before. Like, you've got Sean Phillips, who's a 7-footer. Mark Mitchell, he's back from a season ago. But I look at this team, and it just doesn't feel like a Dennis Gates coach team. And I think that they're a team that is going to get passed up by some of the teams I just mentioned, Ole Miss, Vanderbilt. Heck, Texas, it might take them a little bit of time in year number one under Sean Miller, but we all know that Sean Miller is going to coach his rear end off year number one out there in Texas, and I feel like that's a team that could be falling down along with Auburn just because it just doesn't feel like they have the same identity that they've had in past years.
And Dennis Gates' tenure at Missouri, I think, is the poster boy example of what can go wrong and what can go right during the transfer portal era. And he's had both. He literally has not won a single conference game in a season the year after making a Sweet 16. So it's
and they made the NCAA tournament the next year.
Right. So this is kind of what teams, and this is why I almost kind of like some of these unknown teams that are bringing in a lot of talent, because, hey, this is your moment in time in college basketball and college sports in general where you can take your program from zero to hero, but you can also go from hero to zero in the same sort of facet in just a 1-year cycle. And so, yeah, to your point, I look at Missouri and I see, hey, yeah, talented name. I could tell you the exact same thing last season about Kansas State, and look how that experiment played out. And so ultimately, with these transfer portal heavy teams that I think have talented my ball type of guys, I want to see how it works. And to be honest, I'm not opposed to openly fading those types of teams in the early goings because you might get a disaster class scenario of a 24-point favorite, being tied with 2 minutes to go in the second half.
Yeah, but I do think that there might be a lot of value in taking the points with a team like a Missouri, and they are going to be getting a little bit overvalued. And I have talked about it a lot with regards to the SEC, the big giant middle. And is there a team or two that you're identifying that you do feel a little bit more bullish on? Because I'm right there with you in terms of this conference. I think the value is these teams are in the middle, and it's a big giant middle where we could see 13 plus teams make it to the NCAA tournament once again this year. And is there one or two that really stand out where you're feeling like, all right, while we feel bad about Missouri, maybe Auburn is not going to be what we were expecting this year, you're thinking that there might be one of those teams that's maybe picked like outside the top 5 or the top 6 that can really ascend?
Yeah, no, I'm looking at Porter Moser in Oklahoma, and I've been very critical about Porter Moser's tenure at Oklahoma because ultimately it was a question of, hey, you had this really great thing going at Loyola Chicago in the Missouri Valley Conference, and how does that translate when you did take that exact same style? You did have some talented teams in the past at Oklahoma that kind of seemingly underachieved to an extent. Now, this season, this roster, in terms of the name value, the players that I've watched over the years, kind of culminating on this roster, far and away, this is the most talented roster that Porter Moser has seen at Oklahoma, and I think you have to go back a long time, even past the Trae Young years, or Trae Young year rather, of having this type of roster accumulate at the program of Oklahoma. And from that standpoint, again, I kind of like banking on that upside. Again, it could also be a total disaster when you see a guy like a Nigel Pack and a Xavier Brown, two heavy kind of my ball guys from a season ago, Darian Reed, Tay Davis, dudes who are all very, very talented, but how do they gel in the court when it's a fresh new look roster? Obviously, that's yet to be seen. And I do think if you're looking for that upside in the middle, you do have to kind of target those talented rosters and almost bank on the coach being able to galvanize them right out the gate or very early on in the season. And Oklahoma is one of those programs that I think really draws my eye in the SEC.
And just like you need to bank on that in college basketball, on this podcast, we always have to bank on great guests. And you're one guy that we can always bank on, my friend. You do such an excellent job over with your YouTube feed, youtube.com/Rob Donaldson. You're just a wealth of knowledge when it comes to taking a look at this great game of college basketball. So, Rob, let the good people know what's on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
Well, hey, Greg, I love talking ball with you, even when we're getting all these storylines. I mean, we're talking about basketball, and it's September. We're knocking on the door of the college basketball season, actually starting with actual games. We're just basically 1 month removed right now, and I'm so excited for that point in time. But for those who want to follow my Major League Baseball bets or my college basketball bets, once those come into season, Twitter/X at RobDFB, and also my YouTube channel, which is just my name, Rob Donaldson. But as always, Greg, I appreciate having me on, man.
It is always great to be able to get Rob aboard. Such a wealth of knowledge in this great game of college basketball, and every single time he joins me, he lends such great insights. So big thanks to Rob for joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN family podcast. And if you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever you get podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one of two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, letters the name does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline, and the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. I am with you guys every single day on this podcast, regular season and off season. We're up to over 2,150 straight days without a missed podcast, so the consistency has been there. Always appreciate you guys tuning in, and I will be back with you guys once again tomorrow. Thank you so much.
Are you interested in effortlessly growing your Bitcoin portfolio? I sure am. The Bitcoin credit card by Gemini earns you Bitcoin back on every purchase. Use it like any credit card. Buy lunch, gas, or your weekly groceries, and you'll earn up to 4% back instantly in Bitcoin or one of over 50 other cryptos straight to your account. All that with no annual fee. And right now, you can grab a $200 Bitcoin welcome bonus. It's the easiest way to start building your Bitcoin stack. Go to Gemini.com/card to learn more. Terms apply. See the link in the description for more information regarding rates and fees.